What is going on, everybody? Frank Corva here, independent Bitcoin journalist and advisor to Heatbit. Super pumped to have organized this group of gentlemen here to talk about hashing the dip. While Bitcoin's price is low, we're also seeing the hash rate down right now. So there's, in my mind, no better group of people to discuss this than the one and only Skot. I guess, inventor of Bitaxe, guy who created the blueprints for Bitaxe, as well as a board member of the 256 Foundation. Tyler over here. Tyler is also on the board member of the 256 Foundation, and also CEO of Exergy, a new company that he's founding, and also an organizer in the HeatPunk scene, also helping to organize the HeatPunk Summit that will be going on in, I believe, 2 weeks in Denver. We're going to get into that. And then none other than Alex Busarov, founder of Heatbit, CTO, technical guy, guy who knows a lot of technical stuff. And every time I talk to him, my brain feels like it wants to break because he's a smart guy, like all three of you. So happy to be here with all of you guys. I've had my Bitaxe plugged in and my Heatbit plugged in while this dip has been going on, because I also left my full-time job a few weeks ago, so it's a little harder to buy the dip. So I've been hashing the dip. So let's actually start there. But Scott, actually, you know what? Let's go to that second. Scott, we were just talking off camera. You had some very cool news. If you wanted to share that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just this morning, a miner solo mined a block using a public pool on their self-hosted Umbrel instance, which is pretty rad. This is self-sovereign, top to bottom mining. I mean, there's really no better way to do it, in my opinion. So it's very exciting to see. It's like I was saying, it's like Christmas morning, waking up. Like the whole Twitter, universe just explodes with excitement, and it's so amazing to see every time. It's happening more and more. I think we'll sort of normalize this going forward. And it's a good thing for Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining for sure.
Do you have to do some fingerprinting to figure out if it was a Bitaxe? I always wonder, people kind of figure that out a little bit later, right? What kind of miner it was.
I've looked into how to do this. I think technically you could, based on how Extranons 2 is rolled, but it's not obvious, right? It really is privacy focused, right? We don't know what miner this was. The only reason that we know it's public pool is because the miner decided to include that as the script sig tag in that block. They have the option to not. They can put whatever they want. So, it really leaves the option up to the miner as to how much they want to disclose, which I think is good for them. Obviously, I like to know as much information as possible, but I really think that it is important that the miner, it's up to them to disclose as much or as little as they want.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Appreciate that. And Alex, with the Maxi and the Maxi Pro that are out, the difference with them and previous editions of Heatbit devices is that you will be able to do solo mining with the new devices, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you can do solo mining on Maxis already. You can do you can choose your own pool on Trios, and that is kind of like solo mining that you can do there. And yeah, all the other devices that we're rolling out, people could just do what they want, right? The way we thought about this, we thought, well, let's make it easy first. So it starts with the default pool, which is Luxor. But then some people already know about pools. Some people take a bit of time to learn, and then they can choose their own pool. Or some people get to the point of setting up their own node and doing proper full solo mining. But it's a bit of a journey, and it's important to start with baby steps first.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah. To the panel here. So the general theme here is this idea of we got Bitcoin's price dipping that correlates with the hash rate coming down as well. We have some of the more pubco miners maybe turning off some of their mining, and also moving away from mining a bit, pivoting a bit more to AI. I've had a lot of conversations with heads of pubco institutions, and that seems to be all the rage right now. Are we in the midst of an early opportunity for home mining to become more normalized? Is this what we're seeing, or are we still a little bit too early to make such a proclamation? I'll start with you, Tyler.
I think we're in this transition phase where, excuse me, the large miners are recognizing the challenges of running a mining business operation, especially on grid, and how lucrative AI can be. And so we're seeing the hash rate drop as a result. I don't know if you guys saw like the big hash rate dip with the cold front in the US a couple of weeks ago. That was interesting to see. I'm sure Alex and I are in full agreement that we want to see hash rate spike when it's cold, and you can kind of map out on the earth where
that was a little counterintuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little counterintuitive. But I'm sure we'll get into it. Like, home mining is a huge potential for home mining, small business mining, even commercial mining. But we're in this limbo state where great companies like Heatbit and all these people have to develop these products and software services to make it easy, as Alex said, so that every home can have one. And the Bitaxes are awesome. What, Scott, you said there's like maybe 100,000 of them around? Somewhere in that neighborhood, yeah. There's no official count, but that's like 300 industrial miners worth of hash rate of chips. Yeah. So we definitely need to develop more products, more solutions to manifest this into everyday life. And then I think we will start to see, it'd be cool if we could map that out and try to guess like how much of the network hash rate is actually home mining.
Scott, with this to go over to you, you know that I'm a huge fan of OSMU, the Open Source Miners United organization or group that you started on Discord that started with just a handful of people. Now is what, in 7,000 members or something along those lines?
I think there's like 13,000 people actually, but yeah, it's growing pretty fast. There's a lot of interest.
Oh, amazing stuff. When it comes to that, I think I love Bitaxe, but I also love this idea of this collective brain power that's forming in Discord to talk about different ways to do home mining. What are some of the most exciting things that you're seeing? And when the hash rate does drop, does this really become sort of maybe like a focus of the conversation? Are people more prone to plug in or to sort of, I don't know, develop further when it feels like this opportunity presents itself?
I think people show up for a lot of different reasons, right? It's really kind of hard to keep track of what's going on. Certainly, there will be people who see the hash rate drop and the resulting difficulty downward adjustment and be like, okay, my chances of solo mining a block have just improved, and we'll get into that reason. I think sort of my high level view of it is we've just seen this upward trend in interest from just first timers plugging it in and wanting to get involved and learning about Bitcoin mining, to developers who see this as an opportunity to make something neat for the space. And we like to have all types. So it is still a very exciting time.
Love it. Speaking of all types, Alex, I know that Heatbit is very much sort of the entry place for a lot of people who are new to Bitcoin. They're getting this because I've had this conversation a lot with Siri. Shout out to Siri, who does a lot of day-to-day grinding for Heatbit, head of growth there. There's doctors that order it. They want to have a conversation piece in their office, and they say, "Hey, that thing is not only providing heat, but it's earning me some Bitcoin." I was actually in one of those offices. I'm going to shout out Susie Ward from Bitcoin Policy UK. Her husband, her husband has, I think, 2 Heatbits in his office, which is super cool. And it's a conversation piece. And he says, he'll be cracking he's an osteopath. He'll be cracking someone's back or adjusting them. And now what's that over there? Oh, that thing is making me some Bitcoin. Well, I'll take one of those if it's making you some Bitcoin. That sounds good. How much is that turning into somebody then sitting down, doing further research, maybe even going as far as then learning about what the likes of Tyler's doing or what's happening with Bitaxe or the OSMU community?
I think there's a whole range as well. There's a lot of people who already know quite a lot about Bitcoin and quite a lot about mining. And then as soon as they get their Heatbits, they're like, okay, I want to switch to my own mining pool, or I want to go solo. And there's quite a lot of people who are like that. But then we see that Heatbits are often used as presents. So that someone who is a Bitcoiner and who wants to orange pill someone, they go like, hey, I got you something nice. And then, what people get, it's, something they understand. They understand what a heater is, right? Even if they know nothing about Bitcoin. So they can kind of plug it in and start using it and somehow start mining without even realizing it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point they do start wondering, and then we see that after some time people start. There's normally a bit of a learning period after which people start to turn with more questions like, oh, how do I change the pool? How do I turn it to solo pool, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. One of my favorite quotes ever in the Bitcoin space is Andreas Antonopoulos. Bitcoin is better experienced than having it explained to you. It's much better to experience it. And I think with whatever, maybe it's Tyler coming in and doing some sort of installation in your business to, some Bitcoin mining that's then heating the business. Or I got my first Bitaxe at a Human Rights Foundation event and I started playing with it. And I don't think of myself as a technical person, but I went further down that rabbit hole as a result of that. Since I've had a Heatbit, I'm paying far more attention to the difficulty adjustment variation. So all of this stuff starts to happen, right? I'm curious, any stories from either of you about maybe like almost some of these 0 to 1 moments of somebody who really wasn't maybe was kind of curious. Either they got something like a Heatbit as a gift or a Bitaxe, someone gave them something like that, or they got it just out of curiosity and then sort of kind of went further down the rabbit hole. I don't know, became like a maniac like all of us or something like that, or just maybe just sort of it piqued their interest and now they're contributing in some way. I'll start with Scott there.
There's this amazing story. I mean, this happened yesterday on OSMU. This guy showed up and he's like, man, I want to get a Bitaxe. And I was like, okay, we've got a list. There's plenty of places where you can buy it. And he's like, oh, but none of these places accept PayPal to buy it. And I was like, PayPal, come on, just, use your Bitcoin to buy it. Like, it's accepted everywhere. And he was like, well, I don't have any Bitcoin. And I was like, okay, well, it's fairly easy to get it. Like you can buy it. You can actually buy it on PayPal if you want, and then, send it out to your wallet. He's like, Bitcoin wallet? I don't have a Bitcoin wallet. I was like, oh my gosh. All right, well, let's get you set up with a wallet. And it was just this amazing setup where there was someone who had heard about Bitcoin mining, in one way or another, but was like so new to Bitcoin, had never even touched it or had any idea how it worked. And it was really cool. Just over the course of yesterday, we saw him like, okay, cool. Like, I got some Bitcoin. Like, I need a wallet. I'm going to send it to there. Like, okay, I bought a Bitaxe. And I was like, to mine Bitcoin and all, you really need to have a wallet, right? And just that whole kind of like seeing it all come together and like, seeing this new Bitcoiner essentially being born because there was someone with an interest in mining. Maybe he's like, just a gearhead or whatever, but just, all these avenues by which people can come to Bitcoin. Like you're talking about the doctors who are running a Heatbit. It's like, okay, cool. Like this is a neat heater. Like I've heard of this Bitcoin thing. I want to get involved. And then, it's just sitting there. And now you're like, okay, all of a sudden now I'm paying attention to the difficulty. Like I'm starting to ask questions of like how this works. And then the rabbit hole is just amazing to dive into. I love to see it.
Amazing. Tyler, to you, it's I can only imagine, somebody comes to you, wants to heat maybe a bigger facility, their business, whatever that is. I would imagine there's quite a learning curve there in terms of managing whatever you're installing, then managing whatever Bitcoin they're getting from that, figuring out what kind of pool they want to join, all that kind of stuff. And I think I'm looking at the smile on Scott's face as he's talking about that. Reminds me of the years that I spent as a teacher. It's giving people those aha moments is really a special thing. It's a really, really cool feeling. So do you have a lot of those? And then I want to also do the flip side. Is there a lot of also just sort of having to hold hands with people to sort of walk them through the process because this is new and sometimes difficult?
Yeah, I think overall, like Bitcoin has so many entry points. It could be the learning tool as Scott described, or the plug and play super snazzy products like Heatbit has for your dentist or whatever. From the more integrated heating solution level that I experience, it's either one or the other. It's an aha moment, or it's this is too complicated and I need to understand it better. And that's part of the reason like we have to keep doing education to make this easier and simpler to set up. So when I have, like right now, I'd say the people that are coming to me to heat a commercial space or a home, they're Bitcoin curious, or it is a relationship that I've built with maybe a home builder or an architect or a developer, and it's kind of forced on the clientele in that sense, or it's hidden, right? They don't even know about it. But one theme that runs true is like it's useful to them, right? And so that utility function is, okay, this is a sunk cost. I'm going to pay for heat anyways. Maybe I have solar. Maybe I'm up in the mountains and propane's really expensive and I don't want to fill up that 500-gallon tank and shovel my driveway once it, in the middle of the winter. And for them, this is an aha moment where they say, this is an electric heater to me. It's a boiler, it's a furnace, it's a plethora of space heaters throughout the building that subsidize their own cost, right, in that sense. And that is a really cool aha moment that I see eventually with the plumbers, the technicians, the tradespeople. What has been interesting from my experience is not so much that this is a heater that pays, it's cheaper. It's what's been surprising here with the installs that I've done is like this smart home angle, right? And so it really is like a smart heater. It's a heater that makes money and is connected to the internet. That sounds pretty smart to me. And so when you combine it with things like your whole IoT ecosystem, or pairing it with the solar, and we were playing around with things like, only use the Bitcoin miner for heat when it's cheaper than the gas, or things like that. That really is exciting to people, as well as like here in Colorado, a lot of people want to decarbonize, be that a jurisdictional push or just personal interest. There are people gutting their homes, going to all electric setups anyways. And you can come in and say, this is the same thing, but it's going to be cheaper. And that's really cool to see.
Wow. Mind blowing. Alex, I feel like you're tasked with this monumental task of making it as easy as possible for people. And I know you've been iterating on these devices for years now. What have been some of the pain points that you've noticed with people that you've had to remove? What has that process been like?
The people that I had to remove what from the experience?
Not the people. Don't remove the people. We want them. We want more of them. No. What sort of pain points, like over the years of iterating upon Heatbit devices and coming up with a system that's, I guess, easiest to use, especially as a device like this might be an entry point for someone. What have you had to sort of pay attention to? What sorts of hurdles have you had to surmount in making the device as easy to use as possible?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest one was UPS actually.
Whoa.
I don't know, Scott, if you guys see much of that. The Bitaxes, they're a little lighter, so I think it's harder for UPS to break. But I'm sure you've
they definitely do. They can fail at any opportunity.
Like the way that we ended up testing devices, there's a standard test that you're supposed to drop the stuff from like 1 meter high in different angles. That was never enough. Like the way that we started testing stuff, we started throwing them from like head level, so like from 2 meter high at every angle, and then some videos on YouTube where we'll like throw it as far as we can, and then if it passes that we call it the UPS test, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was one, because it's gonna arrive intact in order for people to use it. But on a more serious note, what is it that people struggled with that we had to remove? I think just we set it up in terms of the setup flow. I think we made it very easy from the outset. It was more of making sure that it works very, very smoothly in all the corner cases on different kind of Wi-Fi's. Like different regions have different Wi-Fi settings. The Wi-Fi's have different channels. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So like dealing with all of that, there's like thousands of different cases that you could have, and you can test for all of them. You test for the bulk, and then when it hits the market, you always get this. Like we have people with some sort of a paywall on their Wi-Fi, and our devices find it hard to deal with them. So like we have to come, the support team has to connect and help with them. But coming back to a slightly earlier point on kind of orange pilling with devices, I actually think that's a very important feature of mining device, especially home mining devices or the ones that do the heating. So most of the people get orange pilled through the price. They're like, okay, you buy this thing called Bitcoin, and it's going to go up in price, and you're going to get rich. And then what happens? Roughly half of the time it goes up. maybe slightly more than half, and slightly less than half it goes down. And then if it goes up, people are happy and maybe they sell and they're happy. And if it goes down and they're unhappy, and maybe they sell and they're still unhappy. So there's quite a bit of a churn to kind of price path of orange pilling. If you do it with a device like a Bitaxe or a heating device that also does the mining, there is no downside. Like you use the same amount of energy, you get the same amount of heat. It's a cool device and pleasant experience to use. Like there's no scenario where you're like, oh, Bitcoin sucks, because it's just good for you. And this way of orange pilling is actually a lot more fruitful.
I personally can attest to that, and I think one of the things that excites me about these devices and people obtaining it this way is that, to me, it feels a lot like the way I've obtained Bitcoin through maybe like Fold or like a credit card where I get rewards in Bitcoin, where I'm not really thinking about the price of those rewards. It's just like, oh yeah, I earned some rewards doing this thing. I earned some Bitcoin by turning on my heater. And I think what ends up happening there is it's not like I sat there and looked at my dispensable income or my disposable income at the end of the month and said, I have $130 to go spend on Bitcoin. I really hope that goes up in value if I spend it on Bitcoin. That psychology, I think, is much different than just having that Bitcoin show up in a wallet somewhere. But I think the big thing here, and one of the things I want to get into, is economics, right? I think when it comes to Bitcoin, oftentimes people are sort of brought to this space saying, yeah, this thing is going to go up forever, we're getting rich, all that kind of stuff. Mining is a little bit different. I don't think any of you pitch it to people like that. I don't think that's the point. And I think there's also a bit of an ethos that comes with anything from what Skot is doing to what Alex and Tyler are doing. And I say that because it's a little bit different. I don't think you'd earn as much with a Bitaxe, but you get a lot more people who are driven to decentralize the hash rate, to physically use different devices to decentralize the hash rate, and you'll make more money with what Alex and Tyler is doing. But again, it's not like tomorrow you're going to be a millionaire. So I'm kind of curious, once people start using this, do they start to sort of internalize the Bitcoin ethos a bit? And I'll start with myself by saying, like, yeah, after this winter of keep running my Heatbit and playing around with my Bitaxe, well, over the last few months especially, it's this thing, you sort of get the bug a little bit and you start to want to like have these things plugged in, whether you're becoming a millionaire or not. You sort of ethos wise, you start to understand Bitcoin and want to take part in this more. Is that the normal experience for people? I'll start with you, Skot. Do you feel like that's the maybe average experience of somebody who plugs in a Bitaxe for the first time?
I think so. I really do. I think, from my experience, I really appreciated that kind of hands-on sort of, thing you can hold and technical thing you can work on being a part of Bitcoin. Like, not really interested in economics at all, to be honest. And it was just like, cool. This is something that, I guess as a guy, as an engineer, it's just like you enjoy that like hands-on thing that has a practical use and that you can see and control and has that ability to dig in and see how it works. I think that's incredibly powerful. I mean, obviously there's people coming to Bitcoin mining for all different reasons, but what we're all doing here, which I think is really important, is like, in addition to helping decentralize the network and helping to get more people mining, is just these other entry points into Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, becoming a large publicly traded Bitcoin mining company and going down that whole route. It's like, no, there's lots of other people who are interested in doing this, and getting them involved by whatever means possible is going to be good for Bitcoin.
Yeah, appreciate that. Tyler, over to you.
I think there's two camps. On the one hand, the vast majority of people, the normies out there, who is asking themselves, when does my space heater ROI? No one, right? So economics isn't a question.
It's usually the inverse. How much is this thing costing me?
A water heater, a furnace, etc. Right? No one's asking that question. The other side of the camp is the reality of the current status is like the Bitcoiners that do know this stuff, they are asking themselves these questions. Skot and I laugh about this a lot, where you'll get a Bitcoiner come and say, they may not know as much about mining. They might say, why would I buy a Bitaxe? It's $100 a terahash. And they have this like unit economics of how ASICs and hash rate is priced. And that's the mining as a business operation mindset. And it doesn't really apply to the home mining. Same with Heatbit. On the other hand, though, what's interesting to me, some of the economic modeling that I've done, because I have engineer brain, is I'll talk about this commercial project we're doing here in Boulder County. They're looking at heat pumps. Heat pumps are very popular, right? They another electric way to heat a space, but they have their own challenges. Like the economics that impact them are heat pumps rely on how cold it is outside. If it's too cold, they don't work as well. And so they're a slave to that. Whereas the hash rate heating systems, they are slaves to the Bitcoin price and then the mining network economics, difficulty, total network hash rate, things like that. It's hard to map this out, you know, on a commercial building level. These guys are looking at the unit economics of a heat pump versus gas over like a 25-year construction loan timeframe, because it's infrastructure. And then effectively what I'm tasked with is estimating how many sats a hash rate heating system can make a building over 30 years and pricing that, right? And so you can get really conservative, you can get really liberal with it. And, you know, on the liberal side of things, it's like, hey man, by 10 years into this, your boiler is going to pay off the entire $5 million building. And he's pumped to go tell the investors that, right? It's effectively like putting a money printer inside of a property.
Sure.
And you can get all kinds of crazy ways to frame that. You could say, well, technically that could pay off some of the construction loan. That's like equivalent of knocking off 2% of the interest rate, right? I mean, it's crazy to think about the economics in that sense.
Yep.
I don't think we've come to like a standard of kind of framing this. I think it's difficult and it's going to be a little bit unique. But on the real estate side of things, what I'm dealing with, like, everything is priced in dollars per square foot. And, you know, how long does the system last? What's the upgrade cycle? So the economics are a big thing to solve. But I would say that there's no like source of truth for what sticks right now. We're just kind of throwing darts and seeing what interests people.
Okay. Yeah, understandable. Yeah, Alex, when it comes to unit economics, how do you usually pitch it to people, and how do people usually think about it? Heatbit users, that is.
So when we pitch it to people, we show the earnings, like that it's a heater, and we kind of show that it's a heater. But then the unique selling proposition when you sell a heater is that it makes money. And then we tend to show it. I think we tried doing it in different ways. We used to show it more in sats. Now we're trying to get more people from outside of the regular Bitcoin communities, you know, people who are more interested in tech. So we show it in dollars. But then there are ways to play with the calculators, and I think people get interested in that and kind of start going the rabbit hole there as well.
Yep.
For our users, we see that roughly 60% use them as heaters, and 40% use them. We'd call it using it as a miner. So, and the test is whether you still run it in summer. So if you run it in summer, then we consider it running it as a miner. Now within those 40%, some people would be, well, I just want to mine. Right, I don't care that I'm spending electricity. I just want to mine. I want to help decentralize the network, etc. I also think, however, there's I think there is part of people who are kind of abusing access to electricity as well. Like,
I want to abuse access to electricity. So teach me about this. Yeah.
That's the part I don't like that much. Right?
Okay.
That's not the use case I'd want to support. But I think it's there, and like it's their devices. Kind of they do what they want with it. But you know, some people have like electricity included in the rental price.
Got it.
Sometimes it's students. Sometimes it depends on your contract. And then some people are, oh, you know, I basically have free electricity. I'll just keep mining. Well, you know, that's not necessarily the best use case, but I think it's still there as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't know that.
That's soul, you know?
Well, that was the big thing in Venezuela, right? So back in the day when Mauricio from Ledin was mining in Venezuela, electricity was subsidized. It was funny. I was living in Venezuela a few years before that. Unfortunately, it was just like year 1 and 2 and 3 of Bitcoin, so I didn't know that. But yeah, electricity was really cheap, and I sort of kicked myself a little bit. If I were just mining Bitcoin on a laptop in 2010 with free electricity, my lord, things would be quite different. That sort of global search for stranded power. I'm actually going to be doing a podcast soon with on Twitter, Sultan of Bitcoin from Venezuela. I think he just joined Luxor, and he's going back to Venezuela, I think, to start mining with the flare gas. But we have this sort of global search for the cheapest power right now. And with that, we've seen from companies like Gridless, as long as there's a buyer of either first or last resort, a Bitcoin miner, it incentivizes more power production and cheaper power production, renewable power production. Does this trend eventually come to the United States? I feel like this is happening in places where they're helping to electrify rural Africa. There's an incentive now to electrify rural Africa, which is just one of the best dimensions of the Bitcoin story. But does this sort of, I guess, or, Heatbit predominantly sells to users in the United States. Tyler and Scott, you're based here in the US. Do people start coming up with, does this start incentivizing more people to put solar on top of their residence? Does this start, and we've seen that also with Gridless. They created this new device, Juakali, where their solar network, sun is just being turned into Bitcoin on the farm, on these farms in Kenya. Really, really exciting stuff. Are we seeing any hints of that yet? Do you know any Bitcoiners that have put renewable power into their home so that they can mine more Bitcoin? I'll start with you, Tyler. I think you'd probably be the best to speak to this one first.
Certainly. I think that, we are blessed in the sense that we have large electrical grid infrastructure. We don't have the challenges that Gridless is solving out in Africa. But that doesn't mean that you can't benefit from these tools. Like, I would love to see Juakali, as you mentioned, combined with a heating element, right? Using that heat off of the Bitcoin miner itself as really this smart ecosystem. Like, if you think about it as pieces of the puzzle, this is how I think about it. Solar, it could be hydroelectric. I was up at Bitcoin Alaska, and a lot of people told me they have like micro hydro streams in their backyard, and they have so much extra power. They're like shunting 3,000 watt like resistive heaters in their garage for no reason, just to eat the load. And so, okay, there's energy in. There's heat. Everybody wants heat for some reason. Even in warmer climates, it could be hot water, right? Or some space heaters in a cold area of the house. The money aspect, the Bitcoin angle, home batteries are growing. You see the advent of like Tesla power and things of that nature. This is why I was mentioning earlier, like the smart IoT stack. I think that scales beyond like your blinds and your light bulbs to, actual energy infrastructure that can lead to a more sovereign home. And I do think that would be enticing for US and Western culture as well, because, well, the challenge is like the grid doesn't want it. If you say, I want 15 kilowatts on my roof, like we have at this building here, any excess that we don't use is sent back to the grid, and they give you like 1 cent per kilowatt hour, but they charge me 15 cents to buy it. The Bitcoin network would pay me 7 times more for that. And so I would love to disconnect in that sense. So I hope that with this toolkit of all these little pieces of the puzzle, you can really help make like a sovereign energy building and home in that sense, where you're less reliant. And this isn't to say like, I'm going to sever my natural gas lines, like I'm going to be completely off the grid. This is like reliability, robustness, things of that nature. And one other quick anecdote that comes to mind when you ask that question, Frank, is like, I learned in Texas, ERCOT, they have their own grid, free market grid. Generac makes home generators. There is a ERCOT specific Generac model that ties into the electricity pricing for homes. And when the electricity gets too expensive, the Generacs just turn themselves on to turn natural gas into electricity. And so that is a price triggered energy system, right?
Wow.
You could think about it being the opposite. What if every home had a smart heater that knew when electricity was cheap enough, right? Or maybe it had a way to dump heat outside because it has solar, or the electricity from the grid is cheap enough. And you kind of have all these pieces to the equation now where you can do the smartest thing to save the consumer the most amount of money, stack the most sats, or you could optimize for other targets like carbon, like I said earlier, in real time. And that gets me really excited about all these cool technologies and use cases for, the Bitcoin chip, which is a device that turns electricity into heat and money. Like, where does it make sense? There's plenty of applications.
That's bananas. Scott, I see you smiling. I feel like you want to chime in there.
I think it's important to point out that big Bitcoin miners have sort of always had this opportunity to locate in jurisdictions and build out big farms where electricity price is low, right? Build these massive facilities, get these power purchase contracts, and really lower their cost for mining. But it was basically only available to them because that's what the machines are made to do, right? We've only had these large industrial miners. They cost thousands of dollars each, require industrial grade power and industrial facilities because of the noise and heat. And so I think it's really exciting, basically what we're all working on, which it gives this opportunity to the rest of us towards smaller installations, right? Something that you can actually run in your home, something you can run in a light commercial space, to take advantage of this clear benefit that we have in Bitcoin mining is buyer of first and last resort, and to monetize stranded energy. We've known about that ability of Bitcoin mining to do that for a long time, but it just hasn't been feasible, right? Whether you're, a doctor's office and you have this, cheap power for whatever reason to light commercial, and that is what is so cool about this movement, right? Is that now we can do it, right? People can do it. It expands this market beyond sort of these centralized big players. That this kind of one of like how I got into this space was I had an office and electricity was included. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to be a mining god. And so I got myself a bunch of S9s and plugged them into my office and was like, wait a second. I rewired the power. Like I have that, knowledge as to how to do that. But still, it was like, I can't run these and also be in the office myself. Like, it's just ridiculous. That equipment is not made for it in any way.
It's noisy, too noisy, I'm assuming.
Too noisy, way too noisy, and too hot. I actually set up a script to only run them at night when I wasn't there, but then it turned out there was an apartment above and they complained about the noise. It's insane. That equipment is not meant for that. But, like for example, Heatbit, like it has Wi-Fi. Just like, I don't know if people even realize the significance of that it has Wi-Fi, right? Yeah. All these industrial miners require Ethernet. No one is going to wire Ethernet to their space heater.
Yeah.
Like it has Wi-Fi. You can just get it. You can just plug it in. It's unobtrusive. And, if that's what you want to do, you can take advantage of, your stranded energy essentially.
Yeah. 100%. Alex, I want to go back a little bit to what Tyler was saying there, just about how we're sort of, and to what Scott is saying, we're in the process of reconceptualizing what mining is going to look like. And I know you have an incredible ability to like look out on a timeline and say, okay, we need to get from here to here. So when it comes to where we're at right now in your mind, so when you think about products for Heatbit, but also just generally speaking, broader decentralization of the network, do you have certain things that you want to see happen, or are you more sort of paying attention to what is happening, iterating upon that? Is it more of a, okay, I see what's working over here, so let's do more of that, or here's really what I want to make happen as somebody who's developing in this space?
I think there is no optionality. I think to me it's pretty certain what's going to happen is that big mining as it is going to die. The question is when. And I've been at a bunch of conferences lately and been speaking to miners, some big miners, some VCs who invest into mining. And I was asking them, I wanted to make the question more specific. So I was saying, what's going to happen to big mining after 2 more halvings? Just making it more specific.
Yeah. And
the others were split. Some miners, very old miners, they would be like, oh, it's just going to readjust. And, just like it's always been, we've always been worried, but it's going to be fine. And then some of the other miners would be like, yeah, it's gonna move back into homes and with heat reuse applications, because basically this and the push to that has been built into the protocol, right? That's called the halvings. It's just impossible not to become more efficient. If you're not becoming more efficient, if you're not getting more hashes per unit of energy or per cost of the energy, then you're out of business. Then you just can't keep going it and then keep doing it. So the most efficient way is when you have free energy, as in legally. And that is when you combine it with all sorts of other heating. Some people get surprised when I tell them is like, well, the electricity that we use for heating is like 3-4 times more than all of Bitcoin mining combined. So sometimes it's like, what, really? I thought Bitcoin mining uses so much energy. It's like, no, we use way more energy for heating. Only small part of the energy goes is electricity, and even that electricity is actually Bitcoin mining several times. So what's going to happen? Big Bitcoin mining is going to die, and Bitcoin mining is going to move back into homes, which I hope, and this is where I think we need to do our job right. As a collective, I hope we'll make sure that as it moves back home, it's gonna help to decentralize the network. Like, no new layer of centralization will be created as it moves back home.
Interesting.
Can I just add to that quick, Frank?
Please, yeah.
The operational efficiency Alex just mentioned, like, made me think of something. So shout out to Block and Proto, their rig, right? They're making this really cool new Bitcoin miner, and they seem to target operational efficiency for the technicians. Quick, hot swappable fans, plug and play boards, even PSUs, right? So they're saying, I got to save money on the technicians and the operations to run a mining business. When I think about what Heatbit is building and these other products, what's the operational cost on your water heater? How many times do you send a technician down there? Very rarely, right? Or what is the marketing team chunk of the revenue that you have to pay for your water heater? None, right? Because these aren't mining operations. They're just appliances and gadgets and infrastructure. So in that sense, like, if Bitcoin mining, targets the most efficient operation, the most efficient operation is an operation that's not an operation. Like, that's the answer.
Could I push back a little bit there, if you don't mind, Tyler? So
sure.
these miners, I was just speaking with I think it was Bo and Christine from Abundant Mines, and talking
Sure.
about what it's like to maintain the facilities that they do their hosting from. And maintaining a Bitcoin miner, I've never maintained an S9 or a bigger miner or anything. It's challenging. Now, like I said, I've never had an issue with my Bitaxe. I've never had an issue with my Heatbit. But I know that people have issues with miners as just a general rule of thumb. So I understand the point you're making to a certain level, but I get that you're saying this is sort of just now an appliance, but there is a Bitcoin miner built into it. So there's going to be some level of upkeep necessary? And I know that you're sort of, and seriously, major shout out to Block and this new technology that's more just sort of, instead of having to sort of like ship the entire miner back to a facility to have it repaired, now you could just sort of take out the piece that needs repairing or replacing and change it. But on some level, when I think about someone in your position, I get almost a little bit anxious. I'm like, I can only think about the sorts of repairs and upkeep that Tyler has to do. Are you saying that that's not really something to be all that concerned about?
I'm saying it's something I have to worry about right now, because industrial Bitcoin miners are not designed as appliances or infrastructure, and they're not even designed well at all. Like, when I think about Heatbit, for example, let's pull on that thread. It's the only miner that I know on Earth with like a UL certification. So it's gone through extra tests, right? Yeah. And so when you change your design framework and what your goal is, this has to survive in this application, frequent start stops, because you're using it as a heater, not as just a 24/7 miner. That could also be attributed to it. Like the lifetime could just be longer because it's not running 24/7. I think, this is just indicative of the fact that the current industrial miners on the market aren't designed very well. It's not their intended goal. They are shipped quick. It's kind of this carrot on the stick. They know they have like a 30-month lifelong life cycle at all to make money, and then they're going to have to scrap them for e-waste and get new ones, or they end up in the HeatPunks' hands as machines to retrofit. But I think when we have this open source and available building block stack for Bitcoin mining, chip availability direct as well, companies like Heatbit and others can come in and really put in the due diligence and the effort to design them to last longer and perform better.
Okay. Understood. Yeah.
That's such an important point, right? When you think about like, oh, it's really hard to maintain Bitcoin miners, that's the industrial mining paradigm. Those machines are 100% built to have, the lowest cost per hash rate, right? They are absolutely stripped down to the bare minimum. And, like, that's not how Heatbit works, right? Like, that is absolutely not the goal of Heatbit, right? It's a reliable appliance, and it's absolutely possible to make a miner that is reliable when you are actually interested in the heat, as opposed to just this machine that's going to last for that, short life cycle that Tyler mentioned before you're going to junk it and get the next one.
Understood. Scott, I want to stay with you. And also just sort of for some context for people listening, both Alex and Scott, I think, did something they both, the way they started, they sort of got an industrial miner. I think it was an S9 for both of you, and just took the thing apart, started engineering something new with the chips inside of it. And, they really sort of like stripped the thing down to the basics, rebuilt it in a way that was more fitting for the product and the thing that they were building. So did you learn what you just shared, Scott, as you went through that process? Was it more of like a hands-on thing that taught you that and then said, okay, this thing can sort of be constructed in whatever way that's most fitting? It's just that these S9s, as you said, were built for a certain life cycle, and they're purposely built that way for, I don't know, because these companies want to sell more of them or whatever their reasons for building that way is.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spent a lot of time, as I'm sure Alex has, staring at these miners and trying to figure out how they work, because being electrical engineers, we're like, we can build this kind of thing. Like we know how this stuff works, and what we currently have out there, maybe that works for industrial mining applications, but it's just not the only way to do things. It's this like, there's got to be a better way kind of moment, which I absolutely believe there is a better way.
Alex, was there an aha moment for you where you realized this could be a heater? And I'll say there have been attempts at this, and previous heaters / Bitcoin miners were far more of like S9s in a box than Heatbit is. Heatbit is not that, but that's what a lot of them were. What was the aha moment for you when you realized this could be more sophisticated? This could make more sense just as an appliance that does mining. What was that breakthrough like?
It was a similar kind of moment, I think, as for Scott. I had an S9. I turned it on. I bought it as a toy, actually. It wasn't like to commercially mine to make money. It was 2020. I was in my Shanghai flat and I was bored. I was under lockdown. It was COVID. So I bought a miner as a toy, actually. And it got loud and it got really hot. And that was the aha moment. Like, oh, that's actually a perfect heater, right? If you understand how physics works, at the very basic like school level, you realize it's actually really, really great heater. Any miner would be a great heater. That actually still, like when I speak to a lot of people, including a lot of smart people, there's still confusion, and they think, oh, if this thing is heating and mining, it's going to be using more energy. I'm like, no. Please, let me explain this to you.
I think that's to their credit, though. I think it's a fair sort of, ideally, they would think about it in terms of like, oh, this is a dual purpose machine versus this one machine that does two things simultaneously. Yeah.
So I think sometimes it takes a bit of time to explain this. But then, and then in terms of redesigning the machines, I think everyone who's doing in our industry who's doing mining heaters, probably everyone starts with an industrial miner at the core, and then people kind of branch out in different ways. We started the same way, right? The first model that we had was actually an S9 inside, but then we shipped it and we were not too happy with the results, and then we completely redesigned the product. We had to completely redesign it. So industrial miners is just not made for homes. Makes sense.
Or offices, as Scott pointed out. Speaking of miners, let me actually stick with you here. Let's do a quick kind of shilling round. Behind you, Alex, you have a miner. Actually, even when I signed on, I thought it was a computer monitor. That flat surface right there, the Heatbit canvas, is actually mining Bitcoin, which is kind of insane. You mentioned that you're quite warm sitting next to it.
I'm sweating, man.
Yeah. It's just a marketing ploy, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. How does something like that work? It's making zero noise. I mean, like even my Heatbit makes a little bit of like a air blowing noise. How does that work silently?
So there's different ways that you can. So heat is created, right? So through resistance within the chips, the electricity turns into heat. But then you can try to transfer that heat in different ways. The Heatbit that you've got, as well as most of the space heaters, they use something called convection. So the air is heated as it passes through the chips. As the hot air is lighter, it starts to go up and it kind of goes to your ceiling, and it kind of goes in circles in your room. That's convection. There's another way to transfer heat, and that's the it's a bit of a scary word, but it's radiation. Like infrared radiation is the other way. This is a safe one. This is actually absolutely okay.
Yeah.
No hard feelings about this one. So if you have a body which is of black color like this, or of a specific compound like a lot of ceramics, and you heat it up to at any temperature, but if you heat it up at 70 or 80 degrees Celsius, it actually starts to emit a lot of infrared radiation, which heats not the air, but it heats the bodies in front of it. So right now I'm the one being heated. Like this side of me is actually a lot hotter than this side because the panel is on this side. And with that, you actually don't need a fan. So coming to your questions like why is it silent? You don't need a fan. Like there is a fan for the power supply, but for the power supply, it kind of barely spins, so you don't really hear it. So yeah, it's one of the few kind of home miners which are actually silent. You know how Scott was saying is those nines were too loud. I think we really pushed it in the right direction, and now we can have the miners that actually is silent for the homes.
And this for that. It's insane. It's truly insane to imagine. And I think I've joked about this with Siri. It's like especially if you have maybe a partner that doesn't want to hear about it or think about the fact that there's a Bitcoin miner, even if it's a heater in your house, that seems like the most kind of the subtlest way to sort of sneak it into your residence to be mining quietly.
Yeah. People don't realize it's like in those the infrared saunas. You know, it's very similar. It's just the heating element is a Bitcoin miner. Like that's another way to explain it. And you know, unless you know this logo, it's just a black panel. Like you don't even realize there's some mining going on. In fact, if you have a partner who's against Bitcoin mining, maybe you could write like an anniversary date on it.
A picture.
This is the coolest Bitcoin miner. One thing I want to say, people don't realize that radiant heat, as Alex described, is also more comfortable and it's more efficient because you don't spend so much time. Like think about how much energy you have to spend to heat up all the air molecules in your home, and then they leak out through cracks and through windowsills and door sills and all of that. Whereas with radiant heat, it's literally more efficient. This is think back to like boilers where you heat the floor. That's also radiant heat. You are just heating the surfaces, and then they maintain that temperature, and you feel warm. It's like when you sit next to a window at a coffee shop and it's freezing outside and you feel cold, but really the air in the coffee shop is 70 degrees. You're actually the radiator in that sense. You're losing heat to the window. And so in this sense, like it's more efficient. Your electricity bill is going to be lower. You feel more comfortable. You don't feel like the scorched hot air coming through the vents and the scorched cold air or the freezing cold air coming through the vents with air conditioning. It's a much more comfortable setting. So I'm really excited about this. Like kudos to the team. It's so cool.
Bananas. Yeah, amazing stuff. And then what's the math on that? How many terahashes?
This one is slightly older version. This one is 7 terahashes. The Neo version is 10, and it's 300 watts. So the math on that is you, as always, you don't use any extra energy for the heating. You know, just as you get the same amount of heat that you would get from a similar kind of panel, and you get the sats on top. Like that's the math. Amazing.
Let's stick with this shilling theme. Tyler, you have a HeatPunk summit coming up. Please let the people know what they can expect, how, you know, if there's still tickets available, and the details, if you will, sir.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. It's actually end of next week, so Alex will be here as well as Scott and many others. The HeatPunk summit, I started it last year after really diving headfirst into this industry. I realized the gadgets are awesome. I have a Heatbit myself here, the space heaters. There's plenty of punks out there, which is the HeatPunk term, the people tinkering on the S9s, making them quiet, hacking together water heaters, all these different systems, hot tubs, the whole like. And I realized if we want this hash rate heating industry, this emerging sect to grow, we're going to have to, specifically beyond gadgets and space heaters, but actually as building infrastructure, furnaces, boilers, things like that, we have to marry up with the building industry, the people that are doing the trades, the wrench turners, as well as like things come to mind like home insurers or inspectors, energy modelers that are deciding for these large hospitals or college campuses what's the cheapest, most viable heating solution. And so in that sense, the HeatPunk Summit is really twofold. It's maybe 2/3 from the Bitcoin mining world, people really in the weeds, from ASIC manufacturers to open source mining developers like Skot, all the tinkerers, polished companies like Heatbit that have amazing products. And in the same sense, we also bring together people from the trades world, people from the architecture teams, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing teams. And it's a handful of workshops, demonstrations, and panels where we make the punks listen to the people from the building space. What do they need? And we make the people from the building space listen to us, kind of our emerging industry, our challenges we're facing, so we can learn from one another. And then they also get to see a lot of hardware demonstrations. Unfortunately, we're sold out. It's going to be happening here at the space in Denver, Colorado, but we've got maybe like 17 or 18 different systems that are going to be here, ranging from a sous vide from the 256 Foundation as a reference system to plenty of heat bits. Maybe we'll get a canvas here, who knows? And the first hash rate heated hot tub, it's actually getting installed here tomorrow from shout out to Michael at Snorkel Hot Tubs. This is the company that makes the hot tub from the movie Hot Tub Time Machine.
Whoa.
He's a Bitcoiner. He was in Vegas this past year with his big, beautiful cedar wood-fired hot tubs, like wood stoves. But he's building a Bitcoin heated version. You know, it's going to be an immersion system, which is, you know, for the folks that know, it's you take an industrial miner, you submerge it in oil so that it can be cooled and silent. It's not necessarily like the most polished plug and play, but that's where we're at right now. And I think it's a really cool option, and we're going to build from there.
Amazing. Really, really cool stuff. That's exciting. So sorry, no more tickets left for the HeatPunk Summit, but that's really, really cool. Wishing you the best with that. I'm sorry I can't make it, but it seems like it's going to be a blast. Scott, if you could actually let people know, so I mentioned both you and Tyler are on the board of the 256 Foundation, maybe a little background on the foundation, what you guys are working on, and anything else you have going on that you want to, you know, bring to people's attention.
Sure. Yeah. The 256 Foundation is a nonprofit, U.S. nonprofit company that was started by Rod Rudy and Econo Alchemist in Nashville a little over a year ago, with the goal of promoting and funding and developing the open source Bitcoin mining space. Tyler and I just joined the board recently, but we're pretty excited to take it to the next level, right? I think that open source is a very important part of Bitcoin, and it should be a important part of Bitcoin mining too. Yep. We unfortunately have lost that open source component about a decade ago in Bitcoin mining, and it deserves to be there. Open source it's a necessary part of a decentralized system. We know how important decentralization is to Bitcoin. It resists censorship and control from authorities or whoever. Yep. And I firmly believe that we can't have properly decentralized systems without open source, because that takes that centralized control out of the software and firmware and even hardware that controls this. So that's kind of our mission. Our cool tagline from Eco is dismantling the proprietary mining empire.
Love it.
The industrial mining space that we were talking about has become horrifically centralized. There's like 2 Chinese companies that control 95% of the market. And they've been shady in the past. So
could we clarify that? That's so you're talking about Antpool and well, I apologize. You're talking about the producers. So you're talking about Bitmain and Micro XT?
BT. Yeah.
BT.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
Yeah. Bitmain is the company that makes the ant miners like the S9s we were talking about. And they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% market share right now. It's like an overwhelming majority. And so they get to dictate a lot of things about how this works. They've done some sketchy things in the past that are sort of anti-freedom, anti-Bitcoin miner.
Back doors into the devices, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
Bitmain?
Yeah.
In 2017, there was this big scandal called Ant Bleed, where Bitmain secretly introduced a kill switch on people's miners. It was really, really bad. Some independent researchers discovered it, which is not easy to do because all the firmware is closed source and it's very hard to see how they operate. But they discovered it. Bitmain just sort of walked it back. We don't think that Ant Bleed is currently in miners, but they have a whole new set of scams still continuing. One of them is called Secure Boot, which makes it extremely difficult for people to load their own firmware onto machines and actually control the miner how they want to. I mean, I think this has wide-ranging effects from even the biggest miners who want to increase their profits with increased control and reliability, all the way down to home miners who want to be self-sovereign, you know, to people who want to reuse the heat, but also be in control of their machine. So Bitmain makes that very difficult. And then the number two, MicroBT, makes the What's miner. They have like 15% of the market, and it was started by an engineer from Bitmain, and it's basically more of the same. So it's not a very good scene there. And 256 Foundation is setting themselves up to be that champion advocate for open source mining, funding developers who are working on this, and basically interfacing with the industry, and to provide value like across the whole stack.
Okay. Amazing stuff, gentlemen. Thank you. It's such an honor to be with the three of you. I'm not necessarily a technical mind. I'm so impressed by all of your brains and the work that you do. So this is a treat for me to get to pick your minds on this topic. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to everybody who's listening. Let me just quickly, maybe one more round. Any final thoughts, anything that we didn't get to that you might want to just quickly touch on? I'll go over to you first, Alex.
Just want to say thanks for putting this this chat together, and very much looking forward to seeing everyone next week. First in Denver, and then maybe Frank will get a chance to see each other in New York or
love it,
any other place.
Amazing. Yeah, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frank. I mean, I think people are hungry to hear this kind of stuff. They want to learn more about mining, but it's been so hidden and out of reach. You can't even run the devices in the home anymore. And I'll just add a comment. You mentioned, Frank, to Scott and Alex, like their starting place was the S9 and tearing it apart and figuring out how it worked. With the 256 Foundation, these open source building blocks, the firmware, the hash board, the control board, and a mining pool, all of this thoroughly documented. This is what we want. We want the building blocks to be available. And so this can be the starting point for 100,000 more Skots to come into play, and multiple new people to start different companies and different applications, whether it's heating or solar or whatever. It could be another industrial miner. The point being is that you shouldn't have to start at ground zero. We can build atop of one another, and I'm really excited about that. So definitely check out the 256 Foundation. And thanks again, Frank.
Love that. My pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Scott.
Yeah, thank you so much for putting this together, and like thank you for your support. I mean, I think a lot, like Tyler was saying, you know, a lot of people are interested in this from, you know, all range of Bitcoin mining and, you know, Bitcoin in general, people new to Bitcoin. There's a lot of people who are interested in it. They're very hungry for this, this kind of content from, you know, different angles. It's just, yeah, I really appreciate your support, getting this out there, helping kind of get the message out there, and really help this industry grow in what I think is a sustainable way that really champions freedom.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. As I said, I'm just, you know, in awe of the work that you guys do. I genuinely love following everything that you're doing, and it's an honor to be able to speak with you all about it. And to everybody out there, you know, if you did take something away from this, you know, and quickly I'll say something to kind of piggyback on the point that Scott made. I think people are inherently curious. They do want to know about this stuff. And I think these sorts of conversations pique their interest. So if you did find this interesting, please share it, hit the like and subscribe, all that, you know, YouTube stuff, whatever. But please share it, because I think again, a testament to OSMU, you just never know what you're going to unlock within people. And then not only what you unlock on that individual level, what happens when those people start collaborating? And then what happens when the likes of Alex, Tyler, and Scott start collaborating? And now we've actually done something to sort of, I don't want to be too harsh, but maybe like dismantle the sort of pubco mining empire sort of thing. We've at least done something to sort of to point mining in a new direction, and I think a much healthier direction for the Bitcoin network. So, gentlemen, I sincerely appreciate all of the work that you do. To everybody listening, thank you so much for listening, and hopefully we'll be able to do this soon in the coming weeks or months or something.
Let's do it.
Right on.
Thank you.